The monotony of the office cubicle was suffocating. I stared blankly at the spreadsheet on my computer, trying to muster the energy to care about the numbers dancing across the screen. Just another day, another grueling marathon of data entry and analysis. "Earth to Jessa," Marie's voice jarred me from my trance. My best friend leaned against the cubicle wall, her vibrant red hair and infectious smile a stark contrast to the drab office surroundings. "Hey, Marie," I replied, plastering on a half-hearted grin. "What's up? What's up?" She scoffed playfully. "Girl, you've been cooped up in this place for way too long. If you don't come out with us this weekend, I swear I'll drag you out myself." I sighed, knowing full well that Marie's threats were never idle. "Come on, you know I have this big project at work. The numbers won't crunch themselves." Marie rolled her eyes dramatically. "Work can wait. This is about living a little. Plus, I've heard there's someone you need to meet." My curiosity piqued despite my initial reluctance. Marie had a knack for sniffing out potential romantic interests, and her matchmaking skills were legendary. All right, you win. I'll come out this weekend." Her face lit up like a kid on Christmas morning. "That's my girl. Trust me, Jess. This one's going to be special." Little did I know how prophetic those words would prove to be. The weekend arrived, and Marie whisked me away to a local lake where our group of friends had rented boats for the day. As I stepped onto the dock, the warm sun kissed my skin, and the gentle breeze carried the scent of freedom. For a few precious hours, I allowed myself to shed the shackles of my routine and simply exist in the moment. It was during one of our breaks, as we lounged on the grassy shore, that Marie nudged me gently. "There he is," she whispered, nodding towards a tall, broad-shouldered man approaching our group. My breath caught in my throat as our eyes met. His smile was disarming, his gaze intense yet inviting. "So you're the esteemed accountant, Jessa?" he said, his voice rich and melodic. Suddenly self-conscious, I tucked a stray strand of hair behind my ear. "Yep, crunching numbers by day, trying to avoid too much excitement by night." He chuckled, a deep, rumbling sound that sent a shiver down my spine. "Well, we can't have that, can we? I'm Ethan, and I insist you join us for a bonfire at my cabin later. It's time you embraced a little adventure." As our eyes locked once more, I knew my life was about to change forever. Ethan's invitation sparked a flame within me, igniting a desire for adventure that had long been dormant. As our group gathered around the crackling bonfire at his cabin later that evening, I found myself drawn to him like a moth to a brilliant flame. The way he commanded the attention of those around him was mesmerizing. He regaled us with tales of his travels, his voice rich and captivating, painting vivid pictures in our minds, and whenever his gaze met mine, a jolt of electricity seemed to pass between us. "So, Jessa," he said, leaning in conspiratorially, "what's a brilliant accountant like yourself doing wasting away in some stuffy office?" I felt my cheeks flush at his compliment. "It pays the bills." I replied with a shrug, trying to play it cool. Not exactly the most exciting career path, but someone has to keep the numbers in line. He shook his head, a playful grin tugging at the corners of his mouth. "That's a tragedy. A mind like yours deserves to be challenged, to be pushed to its limits. Have you ever considered working for a company that truly values your talents?" Before I could respond, Marie nudged me with her elbow, wiggling her eyebrows suggestively. I shot her a warning glance, but the damage was done. Ethan had piqued my curiosity. As the night wore on and the fire dwindled to embers, our group slowly dispersed, leaving Ethan and me alone in the flickering glow. We talked for hours, about our hopes, our dreams, our fears. It was as if we had known each other for a lifetime, our connection transcending the boundaries of time and space. When the first rays of dawn began to peek over the horizon, I knew my life would never be the same. Ethan had awakened something within me, a hunger for more than just the mundane existence I had grown accustomed to. Over the next few weeks, our bond deepened with each stolen moment we shared. Ethan was like a whirlwind, sweeping me off my feet and carrying me to heights I had never dared to dream of. His charm was intoxicating, his confidence contagious. And then, one fateful evening, as we strolled hand in hand through a moonlit park, he stopped and turned to face me, his eyes shining with an intensity that stole my breath away. "Jessa," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, I know we haven't known each other long, but I feel like I've known you forever. It's almost unsettling how easy it is to talk to you, to be myself around you. My heart pounded in my chest as I gazed up at him, lost in the depths of his eyes. I know the feeling, I replied, my voice trembling with emotion. It's like we're picking up a conversation from another lifetime. And with those words, he pulled me close, his lips crashing against mine in a kiss that set my very soul ablaze. In that moment, I knew that no matter what the future held, my life would never be the same. Little did I know just how true those words would prove to be. From that fateful night in the park, my relationship with Ethan progressed at a dizzying pace. It was as if we were making up for lost time, desperate to cram a lifetime of moments into every fleeting second we spent together. He showered me with affection and attention, sweeping me off my feet with grand gestures and whispered promises. And I, foolish and blinded by the intensity of my feelings, surrendered myself completely to the whirlwind romance. It wasn't long before Ethan insisted on introducing me to his family, a prospect that filled me with equal parts excitement and trepidation. I had never been one to crave the spotlight, and the thought of meeting the people who had shaped the man I loved filled me with a nervous energy. "Don't worry, darling," Ethan soothed, sensing my apprehension. "My mother can be a bit intense, but she'll adore you once she gets to know you." I should have heeded the warning in his words, but love had blinded me to the potential dangers that lay ahead. The day of our first family dinner arrived, and I found myself standing on the doorstep of Ethan's childhood home, a sprawling estate that spoke of wealth and prestige. As the heavy oak door swung open, I was greeted by a woman whose steely gaze and pinched expression immediately set me on edge. "So you're the one Ethan's been raving about," she said, her voice dripping with disdain. "I can't say I'm impressed." I swallowed hard, my throat suddenly dry. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Margaret," she snapped, her eyes narrowing, "and you would do well to remember that." Before I could respond, Ethan appeared, his warm smile a stark contrast to his mother's icy demeanor. "Mother, please," he chided gently. "Jessa is our guest. Let's not scare her off just yet." Margaret huffed but stepped aside to allow us entry. As we made our way into the opulent dining room, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had just stepped into the lion's den, and the predator was circling. Dinner was a tense affair, punctuated by Margaret's pointed barbs and veiled insults. Ethan tried his best to deflect her attacks, but it was clear that his mother held a deep-seated disdain for me, a disdain that only seemed to grow as the evening wore on. "So, Jessa," Margaret drawled, swirling her wine-glass with a practiced air of nonchalance, "what exactly are your intentions with my son?" I froze, my fork hovering halfway to my mouth. "I'm not sure I understand what you mean," I stammered. Margaret's lips curled into a cruel smile. "Oh, I think you understand perfectly well. A girl from your background snaring the heir to the family fortune? Forgive me if I'm a little skeptical of your motives." The words stung like a physical blow, and I felt the heat of humiliation rising in my cheeks. Before I could formulate a response, Ethan intervened. "That's enough, Mother," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "Jessa is the woman I love, and you will treat her with respect. If you can't do that, then we're leaving." Margaret's eyes flashed with fury, but she said nothing more. The rest of the evening passed in tense silence, and as Ethan and I made our way back to his car, I couldn't shake the feeling that a battle line had been drawn. Little did I know, it was merely the opening salvo in a war that would soon consume us all. Despite Margaret's blatant hostility, Ethan remained resolute in his love for me. He insisted that his mother would eventually come around, that her sharp tongue was merely a defense mechanism against the threat of change. "She's been through a lot," he explained one evening as we lay tangled in each other's arms. "My father's death hit her hard, and she's never really recovered from it. But deep down, she's a good person. She just needs time to see that you're not a threat." I wanted to believe him, but the memory of Margaret's cutting words still stung like an open wound. Still, I clung to the hope that Ethan was right, that his mother's icy exterior would eventually thaw. In the weeks that followed, Ethan and I grew even closer, our bond strengthened by the shared adversity we faced. He showered me with affection and attention, as if trying to make up for his mother's disdain with an overabundance of love. It was during this time that he broached the subject of me joining the family business, a multinational corporation that had been in the Ethans family for generations. At first, I was hesitant, unsure of my ability to navigate the treacherous waters of such a high-stakes enterprise. "Nonsense," Ethan scoffed, his eyes alight with confidence. "You're the most brilliant woman I know. With your talent for numbers and your keen mind, you'll be an asset to the company." Against my better judgment, I allowed myself to be swayed by his flattery and my own desire to prove myself worthy in Margaret's eyes. Little did I know that by accepting Ethan's offer, I was walking straight into the lion's den, with no idea of the dangers that lurked within. My first day at the office was a whirlwind of introductions and orientation sessions, but one encounter stood out like a beacon in the fog. As I was being shown to my new workspace, a stunning woman with raven hair and piercing green eyes strode past, her gaze lingering on me for a fraction of a second too long. "That's Vanessa," my guide whispered, his voice tinged with a mixture of awe and trepidation. "She's the new hotshot executive Margaret brought in from overseas. Word is, she's a real shark in the boardroom." I brushed off the warning, too caught up in the excitement of my new position to pay much heed to office gossip. Little did I know that Vanessa would soon become the catalyst for a chain of events that would threaten to tear my world apart. As the weeks turned into months, I threw myself into my work, determined to prove my worth to Margaret and earn her grudging respect. But no matter how hard I toiled, no matter how many late nights I spent poring over spreadsheets and financial reports, her disdain for me never wavered. "This isn't some backyard budget you're playing with," she would snap, her eyes narrowed in contempt. "This is our legacy, and I won't have some upstart accountant jeopardizing everything my family has built." Her words stung, but I refused to let them deter me. I was convinced that if I could just prove my value to the company, Margaret would eventually see me as more than just a gold-digging interloper. Little did I know that Vanessa's presence was about to throw a wrench into my carefully laid plans. As the months rolled by, I found myself increasingly entangled in the web of office politics and power struggles that seemed to permeate every corner of the company. Margaret's disdain for me only grew more palpable, and I couldn't shake the feeling that she was actively working against me, undermining my efforts at every turn. It was during this tumultuous time that Vanessa began to make her presence felt. At first, it was subtle, a lingering glance in the hallway, a casual brush of the arm as we passed each other in the break room, but soon her behavior became more brazen, more overt. "Jessa, darling," she would purr, her voice dripping with saccharine sweetness. "Have you had a chance to review those quarterly projections I sent over? I'd love to get your thoughts." Caught off guard by her sudden familiarity, I would stumble through a response, my cheeks flushing with a mixture of embarrassment and confusion. Vanessa seemed to revel in my discomfort, her emerald eyes sparkling with a predatory gleam. As the weeks wore on, her advances grew bolder, her touches more lingering, her innuendos more thinly veiled. And all the while, I couldn't shake the feeling that she was toying with me, playing some twisted game whose rules I couldn't begin to fathom. Ethan, bless his heart, remained oblivious to the rising tension between Vanessa and me. Whenever I tried to broach the subject, he would wave it off with a dismissive chuckle. "You're imagining things, darling," he would say, pulling me close and planting a kiss on my forehead. "Vanessa's just a bit intense. It's all part of her charm." But I knew better. There was nothing charming about the way Vanessa's gaze would linger on Ethan whenever we were together, her eyes raking over his form with barely disguised hunger. It was a look I had seen before, a look that spoke of desire and ambition, a dangerous combination. Still, I tried to push my misgivings aside, convincing myself that I was simply being paranoid. Ethan loved me, and that was all that mattered. Or so I thought. It all came to a head one fateful evening when Ethan and I were working late at the office, poring over financial reports in preparation for an upcoming board meeting. We were the only ones left in the building, or so I thought. As I stepped out of Ethan's office to use the restroom, I heard a sound that stopped me dead in my tracks. The unmistakable sound of muffled laughter followed by a low, throaty moan. My heart pounding in my chest, I crept down the hallway, following the sounds until I reached the door of an empty conference room. And there, through the sliver of space between the door and the frame, I saw a sight that shattered my world into a million pieces. Ethan, my Ethan, the man I loved with every fiber of my being, locked in a passionate embrace with Vanessa, their bodies intertwined in a dance of lust and betrayal. As the realization of what I was witnessing crashed over me like a tidal wave, I felt the air being sucked from my lungs, the ground shifting beneath my feet. In that moment, everything I thought I knew, everything I believed in, crumbled to dust. And as the tears streamed down my face, a newfound fire ignited within me, a fire fueled by rage, hurt, and a burning desire for revenge. The days and weeks following my devastating discovery passed in a blur of anguish and disbelief. I tried to confront Ethan about what I had witnessed, but he brushed off my concerns with a wave of his hand and a reassuring smile that no longer held any warmth. "You're imagining things, Jessa," he would say, his voice dripping with condescension. "It's just work stress getting to you. You know how Vanessa can be, all that intensity and ambition. It's nothing to worry about." But I knew better. I had seen the truth with my own eyes, and no amount of placating words or empty promises could erase the image of Ethan and Vanessa's betrayal from my mind. As the tension between us mounted, Ethan grew more distant, spending longer hours at the office and finding excuses to avoid me. And all the while, Vanessa prowled the hallways like a lioness on the hunt, her every glance and gesture a silent taunt, a reminder of the secret she held over me. It was during one of these increasingly rare evenings together that I finally found the courage to confront Ethan head-on. We were sitting in tense silence, the weight of our unspoken truths hanging heavy in the air, when I finally broke. "Ethan, we need to talk," I said, my voice trembling with a mixture of anger and heartbreak. "I've noticed you've been distant lately. Is something going on?" He shifted uncomfortably in his chair, refusing to meet my gaze. "You're imagining things. It's just work stress." The familiar refrain, the same dismissive tone that had become his default response whenever I dared to broach the subject of his infidelity. Something inside me snapped, and before I could stop myself, the words came tumbling out in a torrent of pent-up emotion. "Don't lie to me, Ethan. I know about you and Vanessa. I saw you together in the conference room that night. I saw everything." His head snapped up, his eyes wide with shock and panic. For a moment, he looked like a cornered animal, trapped and desperate for an escape route. But then, as the realization of his exposed betrayal sank in, his expression hardened, and a cruel sneer twisted his once handsome features. "So, you finally found out," he said, his voice dripping with disdain. "I have to admit, I didn't think you had it in you to confront me, but I suppose even a mousy little thing like you has a breaking point." The insult stung, but I refused to let him see how deeply his words had cut me. Instead, I steeled myself, drawing upon the reserves of strength I didn't even know I possessed. "How could you do this to me, Ethan?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "After everything we've been through, after all the promises you made?" He let out a harsh bark of laughter, his eyes cold and devoid of any trace of the love I had once seen in them. "Promises?" he spat. "Don't be so naive, Jessa. This was never about love or promises. It was about power and control, and you were just a means to an end." The revelation hit me like a physical blow, knocking the wind from my lungs. All this time, I had been nothing more than a pawn in Ethan's twisted game, a disposable piece to be sacrificed when the time was right. But even as the sting of his betrayal threatened to consume me, a new emotion began to take root. A burning, all-consuming fury that set my very soul ablaze. If Ethan thought he could discard me so easily, he was sorely mistaken. I would make him pay for his sins, for the pain and humiliation he had inflicted upon me. And as I looked into his cold, heartless eyes, I knew that this was only the beginning. The battle lines had been drawn, and I was ready for war. The aftermath of Ethan's confession was a whirlwind of anger, betrayal, and disbelief. As the harsh reality of his deceit sank in, I found myself consumed by a burning desire for vengeance, a desire that threatened to overshadow every other aspect of my life. Ethan, for his part, seemed utterly unfazed by the emotional maelstrom he had unleashed. With a callousness that chilled me to the bone, he delivered the final blow. the words that would forever shatter the illusion of the life we had built together. "Vanessa's pregnant," he said, his voice devoid of any trace of remorse. "And I want a divorce." The ground seemed to shift beneath my feet, and for a moment I thought I might be sick. Pregnant? Divorce? How could this be happening? How could the man I had loved with every fiber of my being be so cruel, so heartless? Before I could formulate a response, the sound of footsteps in the hallway heralded the arrival of a familiar figure. Margaret, her face a mask of fury and disgust. "What is the meaning of this?" she demanded, her piercing gaze boring into Ethan with a mixture of rage and disappointment. Ethan met her stare with a defiant glare, his jaw set in a hard line. "I'm leaving Jessa," he said, his voice tinged with a note of finality. "Vanessa is carrying my child, and I want to be with her." Margaret's eyes widened in shock, her lips parting in a silent gasp of disbelief. For a moment, she looked as though she might crumple to the floor, the weight of Ethan's betrayal too much to bear. But then, something seemed to shift within her, a steely resolve hardening her features. She turned her gaze towards me, and for the first time I saw something other than disdain in her eyes. A flicker of respect, perhaps even empathy. "This is unthinkable," she hissed, her voice trembling with barely contained fury. "You have shamed this family, Ethan. You are no longer welcome in this company or in our lives." Ethan's eyes narrowed, his lips curling into a sneer. "You can't do this, Mother. This is my company, my legacy." "Your legacy?" Margaret spat, her words dripping with contempt. "You have squandered your legacy, boy. You have thrown it all away for a fleeting dalliance with that woman." Her gaze flickered towards me, and for a brief moment I saw something akin to regret in her eyes. "I never wanted this, Jessa," she said, her voice softening ever so slightly. "But he has left me no choice. We do what must be done." And just like that, a fragile alliance was forged, an unlikely partnership born from the ashes of betrayal and heartbreak. Margaret and I, two women united by a common enemy and a burning desire for justice. As Ethan stormed out of the room, his parting words a bitter promise of retaliation, I felt a newfound sense of purpose coursing through my veins. The battle had been joined, and I was determined to emerge victorious, no matter the cost. Little did I know that the road ahead would be fraught with danger and deception, a twisted labyrinth of lies and manipulation that would test the very limits of my resolve. But in that moment, fueled by the fire of Margaret's righteous fury and my own thirst for vengeance, I was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The war had begun, and I would stop at nothing to ensure that Ethan and Vanessa paid for their sins. In the days and weeks that followed Ethan's explosive confession, Margaret and I forged an unlikely alliance, bound by our shared desire for vengeance against those who had wronged us. Despite our rocky history, we found common ground in our anger and determination to see justice served. "You underestimated me, Ethan," I spat, my voice dripping with venom as Margaret and I sat huddled in her opulent office, plotting our next move. "That was your first mistake." Margaret's lips curved into a grim smile, her eyes glinting with a predatory gleam. "And mine," she admitted, her voice tinged with regret. "I never wanted this, Jessa. But he left me no choice. We do what must be done." And so we hatched our plan, a meticulously choreographed dance of deception and manipulation designed to dismantle Ethan's world piece by piece. First, we would strike at the heart of his newfound happiness, Vanessa. With Margaret's resources and my insider knowledge of the company's inner workings, we began to unravel the tangled web of lies and deceit that Vanessa had spun. Slowly but surely, we exposed her true nature. A calculating, manipulative viper who had sunk her fangs into Ethan, poisoning his mind and heart with her toxic ambition. One by one, we revealed her misdeeds to the board, her illicit affairs and underhanded dealings laid bare for all to see. And as the truth came to light, the whispers and sidelong glances began, until Vanessa found herself ostracized and reviled by those she had once sought to impress. "Please, Jessa," she begged, cornering me in the hallway one day, her once flawless facade crumbling under the weight of her exposed duplicity. "You have to help me. I'm carrying Ethan's child." I met her pleading gaze with a cold, impassive stare, reveling in the sweet taste of her desperation. "You brought this on yourself, Vanessa," I said, my voice devoid of any trace of sympathy. "You made your bed, now lie in it." With Vanessa's downfall, The first domino had fallen, and Ethan's world began to unravel at the seams. Stripped of his position and his power, he found himself adrift, a once mighty titan reduced to a mere shadow of his former self. And through it all, Margaret stood by my side, her steely resolve never wavering, even as the weight of her own guilt threatened to consume her. "I never wanted this for him," she confessed one evening, her voice barely above a whisper as we sipped glasses of expensive scotch in the dimly lit confines of her study. "He was my son, my flesh and blood, but he left me no choice." I reached across the table, placing my hand atop hers in a rare moment of shared vulnerability. "He made his choices. Margaret," I said, my voice gentle but firm, "now he has to live with the consequences." As the dust settled and the smoke cleared, Margaret extended an unexpected olive branch, an offer to take the reins of the company, to lead it into a new era of prosperity and redemption. "You've proven your worth, Jessa," she said, her eyes shining with a newfound respect. "You might as well make it official." And as I looked into her eyes, I saw not just the hard-won victory of our shared vendetta, but the promise of a new beginning, a chance to rise from the ashes of betrayal and forge a path of my own making. With a steadying breath, I accepted her offer, knowing that the road ahead would be paved with challenges and obstacles, but for the first time in what felt like an eternity, I felt a glimmer of hope, a belief that, perhaps, the darkest chapters of my life were finally behind me. Little did I know that the true test of my resilience was yet to come. The slamming of the front door jolts me from my thoughts. Ethan storms into the living room, his face contorted with anger. "Where the hell have you been?" he demands, his voice dripping with accusation. "I was volunteering at the youth center," I reply calmly, trying to diffuse the situation. "You know how much it means to me." "Oh, spare me the sob story, Vivian," Ethan scoffs. "You're supposed to be here, supporting me and my career. Instead, you're off playing saint to a bunch of delinquents." His words sting, but I refuse to let him see how much they hurt. "They're not delinquents, Ethan. They're kids who need guidance and support." "What they need is discipline and a swift kick in the ass," he retorts. "And what I need is a wife who understands her role." I feel my blood boil at his condescending tone. "My role? And what exactly is that, Ethan? To be your trophy wife? To sit at home and wait for you to grace me with your presence?" "Don't be so dramatic," he sneers. "You knew what you were getting into when you married me. I'm on the fast track to partner, and I need a wife who can keep up appearances." "Appearances?" I echo, disbelief coloring my voice. "Is that all our marriage is to you? A facade to impress your colleagues?" Ethan steps closer, his eyes narrowing. "Watch your tone, Vivian. Remember who pays the bills around here." The threat hangs heavy in the air, and I feel a chill run down my spine. Are you seriously going to hold that over my head? I gave up my job to move here for you, Ethan. I've sacrificed everything for this marriage. Sacrificed? He laughs humorlessly. You call sitting around all day, spending my money a sacrifice? You should be grateful for the life I've given you. Tears prick at the corners of my eyes, but I blink them back, refusing to give him the satisfaction of seeing me crumble. I am grateful, Ethan, but I'm also suffocating. I feel like I'm losing myself in this marriage. Then maybe you should find yourself a new hobby, he suggests coldly. One that doesn't involve neglecting your duties as my wife. And what about your duties as my husband? I counter, my voice rising. When was the last time you even asked about my day? Or showed any interest in my life? Ethan's jaw clenches, and for a moment I think he might actually hear me. But then he shakes his head, his expression hardening. I don't have time for this, Vivian. I have a career to focus on. If you can't handle that, then maybe we need to reevaluate this marriage. With that, he turns on his heel and stalks out of the room, leaving me standing there, my heart in pieces. I sink onto the couch, my mind reeling. How did we get here? How did the man I fell in love with turn into this cold, calculating stranger? I think back to the early days of our relationship, when Ethan was attentive and loving. We met at a charity event, both passionate about making a difference in the world. He swept me off my feet with his charm and ambition, and within a year we were married. But somewhere along the way, his career took precedence over everything else. And now, I'm left wondering if there's anything left of the marriage I thought we had. 2 years into our marriage, Ethan comes home with a bombshell announcement. "I've been offered a partnership at a law firm in Los Angeles," he declares, a triumphant grin on his face. I stare at him, my heart sinking. "Los Angeles? But what about my job, Ethan? My students?" "Come on, Vivian," he cajoles. "This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. You can always find another teaching job in L.A." "It's not that simple," I argue, my voice strained. "I've built a life here, Ethan. I have roots in this community." Ethan's smile fades, replaced by a look of annoyance. "I thought you'd be happy for me, Vivian. This is a huge step up for us." "For you, maybe," I counter. "But what about what I want? What about my dreams?" "Dreams?" he scoffs. "You're a high school teacher, Vivian. How far do you think that's going to take you?" His words cut deep, and I feel my eyes sting with tears. "I can't believe you just said that. Teaching is my passion, Ethan. It's not just a job to me." Ethan sighs, running a hand through his hair. "Look, I didn't mean it like that, but this is a once-in-a-lifetime chance, Vivian. We can't pass it up." I know he's right, but the thought of leaving everything behind feels like a knife twisting in my gut. "Fine," I relent, my voice barely above a whisper. "I'll take a sabbatical from teaching." Ethan's face lights up, and he pulls me into a hug. "You won't regret this, Vivian. I promise." But as we pack up our life and prepare for the move, I can't shake the feeling that I'm making a terrible mistake. The day of the move arrives, and I find myself surrounded by boxes, my childhood home stripped bare. As I carefully wrap a framed photo of my parents, Ethan walks in, a look of disdain on his face. "You're not seriously bringing that old junk, are you?" he asks, eyeing the sentimental items I've carefully packed. "They're not junk, Ethan," I defend, my voice tight. "They're memories, pieces of my history." "We're starting a new life, Vivian," he reminds me, his tone condescending. "We don't need to drag the past along with us." I bite my tongue, not wanting to argue. But as I watch Ethan carelessly toss my treasured possessions aside, I feel a piece of myself crumble. We arrive in Los Angeles, and Ethan ushers me into our new home, a sleek, modern, high-rise apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. "Isn't it perfect?" he gushes, his eyes alight with excitement. I force a smile, trying to ignore the hollow feeling in my chest. "It's lovely, Ethan." He wraps an arm around my waist, pulling me close. "This is just the beginning, Vivian. I'm going to give you the life you've always dreamed of." But as I stare out at the unfamiliar skyline, I can't help but wonder if the life I've always dreamed of is the one I'm leaving behind. 6 months pass in a blur of cocktail parties and corporate dinners, Ethan's new role consuming his every waking moment. I find solace in volunteering at a local youth center, pouring my heart into mentoring troubled teens. But one evening, as I'm getting ready for a fundraiser, Ethan barges into the bedroom, his face twisted with rage. "Are you seriously wearing that?" he demands, eyeing my simple black dress with disdain. "What's wrong with it?" I ask, my voice trembling slightly. "You look like a damn schoolmarm," he sneers. "I need you to look the part of a successful lawyer's wife, not some frumpy volunteer." Tears sting my eyes, but I blink them back, refusing to let him see how much his words hurt. "I'll change," I mumble, turning away. But as I slip into a designer gown and plaster on a fake smile, I can't shake the feeling that I'm slowly losing myself, piece by piece. 6 months into our new life in Los Angeles, Ethan's behavior takes a turn for the worse. He becomes increasingly distant and irritable, the stress of his demanding job taking a toll on our already strained relationship. I find solace in volunteering at the youth center, pouring my heart into mentoring the kids who have come to rely on me. But one evening, as I'm preparing to leave for a fundraising event, Ethan storms into the room, his face contorted with anger. "Where do you think you're going?" he demands, his voice dripping with disdain. "To the youth center fundraiser," I reply, my heart sinking at the sight of his rage. "I told you about it weeks ago. And I told you to prioritize our social obligations," he snaps. "You're supposed to be at the law firm dinner with me tonight." "I can't just abandon the kids, Ethan," I plead. "They're counting on me." "I'm counting on you," he roars, slamming his hand against the wall. "Do you have any idea how embarrassing it is to have a wife who'd rather spend her time with a bunch of delinquents than support her husband's career?" Tears sting my eyes, but I refuse to let them fall. "They're not delinquents, Ethan. They're good kids who just need someone to believe in them." "Believe in them?" he scoffs. They're a lost cause, Vivian. Just like you'll be if you don't start prioritizing what's important. His words cut deep, but I stand my ground. I am prioritizing what's important, Ethan. Those kids need me. And what about what I need, he demands, his voice low and menacing. What about the sacrifices I've made for this family? Sacrifices? I echo, disbelief coloring my tone. You've been so focused on your career that you've barely even noticed me these past few months. Oh, I've noticed, he sneers. I've noticed how you've let yourself go, how you'd rather wallow in self-pity than be the wife I need you to be. I reel back as if he slapped me, my heart shattering into a million pieces. How can you say that? I whisper, my voice trembling. I've given up everything for you, Ethan. My job, my home, my entire life. And now you'll give up this ridiculous volunteering, he demands, or I'll cut off your access to our joint bank account. I stare at him in shock, unable to believe what I'm hearing. You wouldn't dare. Try me, he says, his eyes cold and unforgiving. I'm done indulging your little charity projects, Vivian. It's time for you to fall in line. With that, he turns on his heel and storms out of the room, leaving me to collapse onto the bed, my body shaking with silent sobs. I feel trapped, suffocated by the weight of Ethan's expectations and the life I've found myself in. Over the next few weeks, I try to be the wife Ethan wants me to be. I attend his work functions, plastering on a fake smile and pretending to be the perfect corporate spouse. But inside, I'm dying a little more each day. I long for the fulfillment I once found in teaching, for the sense of purpose that volunteering at the youth center brought me. But every time I try to broach the subject with Ethan, he shuts me down, reminding me of my place in his life. One night, as we're getting ready for yet another work dinner, I finally muster up the courage to confront him. I can't do this anymore, Ethan, I say, my voice shaking. I'm miserable. I feel like I'm losing myself. He looks at me, his eyes cold and unfeeling. You're not losing yourself, Vivian. You're finding your place in this world, and that place is by my side, supporting my career. But what about my career? I plead. What about my dreams? Dreams, he scoffs. Grow up, Vivian. It's time to face reality. This is your life now, and the sooner you accept that, the better off we'll both be. I feel something break inside of me, the last shred of hope I'd been clinging to shattering into dust. And as I follow Ethan out the door, my heart heavy with despair, I can't help but wonder if I'll ever find my way back to the person I used to be. As the months drag on, the distance between Ethan and I grows wider with each passing day. I long for the connection we once shared, for the love that brought us together in the first place. And so one evening, I muster up the courage to broach the subject that's been weighing on my heart. Ethan, I say softly, my voice trembling. I've been thinking about starting a family. He looks up from his laptop, his eyes narrowing. A family? Now? Are you out of your mind, Vivian? His harsh tone catches me off guard, and I feel my heart sink. I just thought, with your career taking off and us settling into our new life here. Settling into our new life, he scoffs. I'm barely keeping my head above water at work, and you want to add a baby to the mix? But I thought you wanted children, I whisper, my voice barely audible. Maybe someday, he says dismissively, but not now, Vivian. I'm not ready for that kind of responsibility. His words cut deep, and I feel a piece of my dream for our future crumble. But I refuse to let him see how much he's hurt me. Instead, I force a smile and nod. Of course. You're right. It was a silly idea. Ethan returns to his work, and I'm left alone with my thoughts, my heart heavy with the weight of his rejection. In an attempt to find some semblance of purpose, I take a part-time job at a bookstore. At first, Ethan seems supportive, even happy that I'm getting out of the house. But as the weeks pass, his attitude begins to change. I don't like you spending so much time away from home, he grumbles one evening as I'm getting ready for my shift. It's just a few hours a week, Ethan, I remind him gently. And I thought you wanted me to find something to keep me busy. I wanted you to find a hobby, not a job, he retorts. What's next? You'll be neglecting your duties at home to pursue some silly career? I bristle at his words, my temper flaring. My duties at home? You mean waiting on you hand and foot, catering to your every whim? Watch your tone, Vivian, he warns, his eyes flashing with anger. I take a deep breath, trying to calm myself. I'm sorry, Ethan, I didn't mean to snap. I need something for myself. something that makes me feel valued. For a moment, his expression softens, and I think he might actually understand, but then he shakes his head, his jaw clenching. Fine. Do what you want, but don't come crying to me when it all falls apart. I leave for my shift with a heavy heart, wondering if I'll ever be able to find happiness in this new life we've built. A few days later, on a whim, Ethan and I buy lottery tickets. As we sit at the kitchen table, scratching off the numbers, I can't help but feel a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, this could be our lucky break. But as the weeks pass and the drawing comes and goes, our tickets prove to be just another disappointment. Ethan barely seems to notice, too caught up in his own world to care about my foolish dreams. And then, just when I think things can't get any worse, Ethan comes home with news that turns my world upside down. I got a promotion, he announces, a self-satisfied smirk on his face. For a moment, I allow myself to feel a glimmer of hope. Maybe this will be the thing that finally brings us back together, that reignites the spark we once shared. But as the days turn into weeks, Ethan's behavior only worsens. He becomes more demanding, more critical of my every move. Nothing I do seems to be good enough, and I find myself walking on eggshells, desperate to avoid his wrath. Late one night, as I lie awake in bed, listening to Ethan's steady breathing beside me, I can't help but wonder how we got here, how the man I once loved could have turned into such a monster. And as I stare up at the ceiling, my heart heavy with the weight of my own misery, I know one thing for certain. Something has to change. I can't keep living like this. I just don't know how much more I can take. Ethan's promotion seems to have only fueled his ego, and his treatment of me reaches new lows. One evening, he comes home late from work, reeking of alcohol and expensive perfume. "Where have you been?" I ask, trying to keep my voice steady. "Out with clients," he slurs, stumbling into the living room. "Not that it's any of your business." I feel a flare of anger at his dismissive tone. "It is my business, Ethan. I'm your wife." He laughs, a cruel, mocking sound. "Wife? Please. You're nothing but a burden, Vivian, a millstone around my neck." His words hit me like a physical blow, and I reel back, my eyes stinging with tears. "How can you say that? After everything I've done for you, for our marriage." "What have you done exactly?" he sneers. "Quit your job? Abandoned your friends? Moved across the country for me? You should be thanking me for giving you a purpose in life." I shake my head in disbelief, unable to comprehend the venom in his voice. "A purpose? You've taken everything from me, Ethan. My career, my dreams, my sense of self-worth." "Oh, spare me the pity party," he scoffs. "You're just jealous of my success. Jealous that I've made something of myself while you've been content to sit at home and play the martyr." "Jealous?" I echo, my voice rising. "I'm not jealous of your success, Ethan. I'm disgusted by what it's turned you into." He takes a step towards me, his eyes flashing with anger. "Watch yourself, Vivian. You don't want to push me too far." But I'm too far gone to heed his warning. "Or what? You'll leave me? Go ahead. I'd rather be alone than spend another minute with a man who treats me like dirt." For a moment he looks stunned, as if he can't believe I've dared to stand up to him. But then his face twists into a sneer, and he leans in close, his breath hot against my cheek. "You're nothing without me, Vivian. Nothing. And if you even think about leaving, I'll make sure you regret it for the rest of your miserable life." With that, he turns on his heel and storms out of the room, leaving me trembling in his wake. I sink onto the couch, my head in my hands, and let the tears come. How did I let things get this bad? How did I let myself become so weak, so dependent on a man who clearly doesn't love me? As I sit there, lost in my own misery, my phone buzzes with an incoming text. I glance at the screen, expecting to see a message from Ethan, but instead, I find myself staring at a name I don't recognize. Natalie. My heart stops. Who is Natalie? And why is she texting my husband at this hour of the night? With shaking hands, I open the message, my eyes widening as I read the words on the screen. "I had a great time tonight, Ethan. Can't wait to see you again soon. XOXO." I feel like I've been punched in the gut. Ethan is cheating on me. The late nights, the distant behavior, the cruel words. It all makes sense now. I confront him the moment he walks through the door, my voice shaking with anger and betrayal. "Who is Natalie, Ethan? And don't you dare lie to me." He looks at me, his eyes cold and unfeeling. "She's a colleague, a friend. Not that it's any of your business." "A friend," I echo, my voice rising. Since when do friends send flirty texts in the middle of the night? His face hardens, and he takes a step towards me, his fists clenched at his sides. You went through my phone. How dare you? How dare I? I shout, my temper flaring. How dare you cheat on me, Ethan? How dare you treat me like garbage while you're off screwing some other woman? I want a divorce, he says flatly, his voice devoid of emotion. I'm done with this marriage, Vivian. Done with you. His words hit me like a physical blow, and I stumble back, my vision blurring with tears. But even through the pain, I feel a flicker of something else. Something I haven't felt in a long time. Rage. Pure, unadulterated rage. And as I stand there, watching the man I once loved walk away from me, I make a vow to myself. I will make him pay for what he's done. I will make him suffer the way he's made me suffer. And I know just how to do it. Ethan's betrayal cuts deep, but I refuse to let him see how much he's hurt me. Instead, I channel my pain into planning my revenge. And the first step is to gather evidence of his infidelity. I hire a private investigator, a no-nonsense woman named Maria who assures me she'll get the proof I need. And sure enough, within a week, she presents me with a stack of photos and recordings that leave no doubt about Ethan's affair. I confront him with the evidence, my heart pounding in my chest as I watch the color drain from his face. How could you do this to me, Ethan? I ask, my voice trembling with a mixture of anger and hurt. How could you throw away everything we had for some cheap fling? He looks at me, his eyes cold and unfeeling. Don't be so dramatic, Vivian. It was just sex. It didn't mean anything. His callousness takes my breath away, and I feel a wave of nausea wash over me. Just sex? Is that all our marriage was to you? Just a convenient arrangement until something better came along? He shrugs, his lips curling into a cruel smirk. What can I say? I got bored. And Natalie, well, she knows how to keep things interesting. I shake my head in disbelief, unable to comprehend the depth of his betrayal. You disgust me, Ethan. You're nothing but a selfish, manipulative bastard. And you're a pathetic, clingy little girl who can't accept that her husband has outgrown her, he sneers. Face it, Vivian, you were never enough for me. You never will be. His words hit me like a physical blow, and I reel back, my eyes stinging with tears. But I refuse to let him see me cry. Not anymore. Get out, I whisper, my voice low and dangerous. Get out of my house and out of my life. I never want to see you again. He laughs, a harsh, mocking sound that echoes through the room. Gladly. But don't think you're going to get a dime from me in the divorce. I'll make sure you end up with nothing, Vivian. Nothing. With that, he turns on his heel and storms out of the room, slamming the door behind him. I sink to the floor, my body shaking with silent sobs as the reality of what's just happened washes over me. But even through the pain, I feel a flicker of something else. Something I haven't felt in a long time. Hope. Because I know something Ethan doesn't. Something that will change everything. I've won the lottery. 2 weeks ago, on a whim, I bought a ticket for the Powerball jackpot, and against all odds, I hit the jackpot. $10 million, all mine. I've kept the news to myself, not wanting to give Ethan any reason to suspect that I might be planning something. But now, as I sit on the floor of our once-shared home, I know exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to make Ethan pay for what he's done. I'm going to hit him where it hurts the most, his wallet. I hire the best divorce attorney in town, a shark named Jack, who assures me he'll make sure I get everything I'm entitled to. And with the evidence of Ethan's infidelity on my side, he tells me I have a strong case for a generous settlement. But I don't want Ethan's money. I want to make him suffer. I want to watch him squirm as he realizes just how much he's underestimated me. And so, on the day of our divorce hearing, I walk into the courtroom with my head held high, my lottery ticket tucked safely in my purse. I watch as Ethan smirks at me from across the room, confident that he's going to walk away with everything. But then I take the stand, and I tell the judge everything. I tell him about Ethan's affair, about his cruel treatment of me throughout our marriage. And then, with a triumphant smile, I pull out my lottery ticket and hold it up for the world to see. I don't want a dime from this man, Your Honor, I say, my voice ringing out clear and strong. I have all the money I need, and then some. All I want is my freedom, and the satisfaction of knowing that Ethan will never be able to hurt me again. The look on Ethan's face as the judge grants me a divorce and orders him to pay my legal fees is one I'll never forget. And as I walk out of the courtroom, my head held high and my heart finally free, I know that I've won. Not just the lottery, but my life back. And that's a prize worth more than all the money in the world. With the divorce finalized and my lottery winnings secure, I feel a sense of freedom I haven't known in years. But even as I revel in my newfound independence, I can't shake the desire to make Ethan pay for what he's done. And so I set my plan into motion. I know that Ethan's law firm handles high-profile clients, including several major banks in the city. And I also know that he's been angling for a promotion to senior partner, a position that would put him in charge of managing those accounts. So I decide to hit him where it hurts. His reputation. I make an appointment at Ethan's bank, the same one he's been schmoozing with for months in the hopes of landing their business. And when I walk in, dressed to the nines and carrying a briefcase full of cash, I make sure everyone knows exactly who I am. I'd like to make a deposit, I say, my voice ringing out loud and clear across the lobby. $10 million to be exact. The teller's eyes widen, and I can see the wheels turning in her head as she tries to figure out who I am and where I got such a large sum of money. Of course, ma'am, she stammers, ushering me into a private room. We'll just need to verify the funds and fill out some paperwork. I smile, settling into a chair and crossing my legs. Take your time. I've got all day. As the teller scurries off to get her manager, I lean back and savor the moment. I can only imagine the look on Ethan's face when he finds out that his ex-wife, the woman he thought he'd broken, is now one of the bank's most valued clients. And sure enough, within minutes, the bank manager is falling all over himself to accommodate me. He offers me everything from a personal financial advisor to a VIP lounge pass, all the while assuring me that my money is in good hands. I just smile and nod, playing the part of the gracious client. But inside, I'm counting down the seconds until Ethan walks through that door. And when he finally does, his face a mask of shock and anger, I know I've won. "Vivian," he hisses, his eyes darting around the room as if he's afraid someone might overhear. "What the hell are you doing here?" I smile, my voice sweet as honey. "Just making a little deposit, darling. I thought you'd be happy to see me supporting your bank." His face turns red, and I can see the veins in his neck bulging with barely contained rage. "You're doing this on purpose, aren't you? Trying to humiliate me in front of my clients?" I shrug, my eyes wide with feigned innocence. "I have no idea what you're talking about, Ethan. I'm just a satisfied customer, here to do business with the best bank in town." He takes a step towards me, his fists clenched at his sides. "You little bitch, you think you're so clever, don't you? Well, let me tell you something. You may have won the lottery, but you're still nothing, and I'm going to make sure everyone knows it." But before he can say another word, the bank manager clears his throat, his voice nervous but firm. "Mr. Thompson, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. We don't tolerate that kind of language or behavior towards our clients." Ethan's face goes white, and I can see the panic in his eyes as he realizes the gravity of the situation. He's just insulted and threatened a high-value client in front of his boss, and there's no way he's going to come out of this unscathed. I apologize," he stammers, his voice shaking. "I didn't mean—" But it's too late. The damage is done. And as he's escorted out of the room by security, his head hanging in shame, I feel a rush of triumph that's almost intoxicating. I've hit Ethan where it hurts the most, his ego, and I know that this is just the beginning. He may have taken everything from me, but now I'm the one holding all the cards, and I'm going to make damn sure he never forgets it. News of Ethan's outburst at the bank spreads like wildfire, and within days, he's facing disciplinary action from his firm. His clients start to pull their accounts, and his once promising career begins to crumble before his eyes. I watch from afar, savoring every moment of his downfall. But even as I revel in my revenge, I can't help but feel a twinge of something else, something that feels suspiciously like regret. And then one day I receive a phone call that changes everything. "Vivian?" Ethan's voice is weak, broken. "I need to see you, please." I hesitate, my heart pounding in my chest. Part of me wants to hang up, to leave him to wallow in his own misery. But another part of me, The part that once loved him can't resist the plea in his voice. Fine, I say, my voice cold. But make it quick. We meet at a coffee shop near my old apartment, a place we used to frequent in happier times. Ethan looks like a shell of his former self, his eyes bloodshot and his skin pale. I'm sorry, he says, his voice barely above a whisper, for everything. I know I can't take back what I did, but I need you to know that I'm truly deeply sorry. I stare at him, my heart twisting in my chest. I want to believe him, to forgive him, but I can't. Not after everything he's put me through. It's too late, Ethan, I say, my voice trembling. You had your chance, and you blew it. I'm done being your punching bag. He nods, his eyes filling with tears. I know, and I don't expect you to forgive me, but I need you to know that I'm going to get help. I'm going to be a better man, even if it's too late for us. I feel a lump rising in my throat, and I swallow hard. I hope you do, Ethan, for your sake and for the sake of anyone else who might cross your path. He looks at me, his eyes searching mine. What about you, Vivian? What are you going to do now? I take a deep breath, my mind racing with possibilities. And then, suddenly, I know exactly what I want to do. I'm going to start a foundation, I say, my voice growing stronger with each word. A foundation that helps women like me, women who have been beaten down and broken by men like you. I'm going to use my money to make a difference, to help others find their strength and their voice. Ethan stares at me, his eyes wide with surprise. That's amazing, Vivian. I'm proud of you. I nod, my heart swelling with pride. I'm proud of me too, Ethan, and I'm done letting you or anyone else dictate my worth. We part ways soon after, and as I walk out of the coffee shop, I feel a sense of peace wash over me. I know that I'll never forget what Ethan did to me, but I also know that I'm stronger because of it. And as I set to work on my foundation, pouring my heart and soul into helping other women find their power, I realize that this is what I was meant to do all along. I may have started out as a victim, but now I'm a survivor, and I'm going to make damn sure that no one ever forgets it. Months turn into years, and as my foundation grows and thrives, I find myself back in my hometown, teaching at the same high school where I started my career. I'm happy now, truly happy. I've found my purpose, my calling, and I know that everything I went through, every moment of pain and heartbreak was worth it to get me to where I am today. I may not have the perfect life, but I have a life that's all my own. And that's more than enough for me. As I stand in front of my classroom, looking out at the eager faces of my students, I can't help but smile. I know that I'm exactly where I'm meant to be, doing exactly what I'm meant to do, and no one, not even Ethan, can take that away from me.